Stain, right? What's your name?
Mendel.
Mendel.
Mendel. First name is Mendel.
What's your name? Stain. Stein.
Surname means last name? Gottlieb.
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 Ah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start. Hello, my name is Mendel. So Jewish people like to complain a lot. It's part of who we are. And I'm assuming you came here to learn about like Jewish people, Jewish culture, Jewish studies. I used to work full time in a place called Nebraska. It's a state in the US. I don't know if you're familiar with America, but there's a state in the middle of New York is on one side, LA is on the other side. I lived in LA, I grew up in New York, and then smack in the middle, there's this place called Nebraska, which not a lot of people live, but a lot of cattle. There's tons of cattle and not a lot of people. So I used to work there basically full time. I'd fly back to Los Angeles every week for Shabbos to come home. And at this place, there's a college, there's a small college, and it's called Hastings College. It's a very small college. And at this college, I saw a flyer. I was walking one day, and I see this flyer, and it's like a class about Judaism, some type of class. And I was like, wow, this is strange, in the middle of nowhere. So I contacted the teacher, and she says, "Oh, you want to come to my class? I want to invite you to the class. Come talk to my class." So I spoke to the class, and for me, it was very interested. Why are people that are middle of nowhere interested to know about Judaism and learning about it? It seemed to me strange because I grew up in Brooklyn, and New York is a very like insulated, like our Jewish community is very like sort of separate from the outside community. And like I always thought people are really not interested in us. Like we kept to ourselves and they didn't like us, or they weren't interested in us. And it was just like a weird thing to like have people interested in learning what I learned or what I grew up and wanting to know. So you could learn about Judaism. I was thinking about this. You could learn about Judaism in a book, or online. You could learn about it, or when someone comes here to Bahrain, comes here to Israel. I'm assuming you're coming here because like you want to experience it firsthand. You know, like when you come to someone's house for a Shabbos meal, you experience. It's different than reading it from a book, because you're going to get a lot of nuances when you meet people, when you see their kids, when you see like sort of where they come from, and you can make a better, choice if this is your lifestyle, if this is really you, or you're not interested in it. But part of sort of our culture, part of understanding who we are, is we as a people, we complain a lot, and we also laugh a lot. There's a lot of comedy in Jewish, not in the text. If you look at the 5 books, and you look at the Talmud, look at all the books, there's not really a lot of jokes in the Talmud. There's really not a lot of funny stuff. It's more of like we as a people, we sort of developed into becoming funny. Part of it is because like our persecution, people hate us, we keep on moving, we're a minority, and it's easier to make jokes if you're like the underdog, making fun of the society, making fun of yourself. So I don't know what the statistics are, but there was a time in America that 60 or 70% of the stand-up comics were Jewish. It's even today, some of the biggest names in comedy are Jewish. So if you think like Jews own the world or run Hollywood, could be it's true, could be it's not true, but in when it comes to not just entertainment but funny entertainment, there's definitely Jewish people very dominant in those fields. And complaining is also a very important feature of being Jewish. So I want to start off the class with complaining. I want to start off. So this week, I think it was Sunday, I had to go to Yerushalayim, and I had an important medical appointment that I was waiting a long time. And I've been here already like a year and a few months in Israel, and it's just not so, the medical system, and I'm complaining again, but the medical system is not what I'm used to in the US. So I finally get this appointment in Yerushalayim. My appointment is for 3:40, and I give myself enough time. So I leave about 2:15, 2:30, thinking I'm gonna have enough time to get there, have a few minutes. And then I think this is Sunday or Monday, I could look at my WhatsApp, but the bus is going. And when it gets to, you know where the checkpoint, when you get into Yerushalayim, there's like a military checkpoint. And the way into Yerushalayim is always like, you always have to stop. When you're coming back outside of Israel, because this is considered technically the outside, when you go from Jerusalem to here, there's there's security, but they don't really look at you. When you're going inside of the proper Israel, then there's always security. So you always have to sort of wait. It was like 10, 15 minutes. But this time there was huge traffic, like just crazy amount of traffic. We get there and it turns out to be that the entire crossing is completely closed off. Apparently there was some type of accident or some type of something that it was completely shut. So some of the buses and some of the cars took this other way. There's a road that right before you get on to that security thing, there's a way to get out, and you go out there. There's like Arab villages, and there's all these. I don't know. I've never been there before, and I'm stressing out because I have to get there in time, and there's all this traffic, and we finally get off to the side road, and it's traveling through all these towns I've never seen before, never heard of before, and my appointment's getting later and later. It's getting like 4, and it's almost, it's getting 5. It's almost 5. It's like 4:30. So I finally get a hold of these people, tell them on a bus I can't make it. So the lady's like, okay, if you can make it here before 5 o'clock, then you could still come. But I was still on the bus. I didn't even reach Jerusalem before 5. I got there, let's say 5:30. I got to.
Wow.
So I've been sitting in the bus for so long, and it was just very stressful to be on this bus going nowhere. And eventually, the bus driver said we got to get off, and we had to walk. We got to the first stop in Yerushalayim is Steady, I think it's called. It's like a stadium. Yeah. So it's a stadium. So the bus got basically to that area, and we got off. We had to walk basically there to the stadium, and then me and this other guy that was also getting to Jerusalem. And what I needed to do, because it was so late and I missed my appointment, I had to walk, like 10, 15 minutes to get to that station so I could take a bus back to the Kfar Etzion. And so my son, Shalom, he learns in Yerushalayim. He's a student there in high school. And so when I came home, I'm like, he wasn't home yet. I assumed he also had this whole ideal. And I call him, I say, Shalom, like, are you stuck in Jerusalem? What's going on with you? He's like, no, there's no problems. There's a little traffic, but nothing really, like, I didn't notice anything wrong. So what happens? What happens is I took the 2:30 bus, but he took like the bus, let's say 4 o'clock bus. So by the time 4 o'clock happened,
How put this in?
I think it's on. I'm not sure.
Oh,
You want to check? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's on or off.
Yeah, we're recording. There's just nobody online.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Can I get a cup of water? Do you have or coffee or something? Thank you. So my son, basically, because he took the later bus, what happened was the bridge. After a while, I get notices from the WhatsApp group that the bridge is now open. But the problem is because me and all these hundreds of cars were on that side road getting into Shalim a different way, so that you couldn't turn back. You basically had to wait online. But if you came, let's say, an hour and a half later, you you went basically the bridge is open. So you went straight, and basically there's less traffic once you pass. So if you left Bad Ayin at 4:30 or 4 o'clock, you basically wouldn't notice that there was a problem. So he came to Yerushalayim with no problem. Thank you. He came to Yerushalayim with no problem, and he came back with no problem. And I was thinking, this is like an interesting complaint, because it's this thing of mazel that a person has. Sometimes a mazel means like luck, like a certain,
Murphy's Law. We say Murphy's Law in South Africa.
Right.
And then we keep saying that we're not Irish.
Right.
Yeah. But that's what happens. Yeah.
But it's like interesting that something that and because of this, my appointment's going to be another 3 weeks, and it's a big schlep. But it's something that's beyond our control, and it's something of like luck. And sometimes luck is not something. It's like some people have mazel, what we call in Hebrew mazel, like you say mazel tov, like it should be a good mazel. Some people have luck and some people don't have, or sometimes a particular day. Sometimes the day is going very well, and sometimes the day is going really bad. And it could be just the way you woke up, how you started your morning routine, whatever it is. Like just somehow something is not working and nothing works that day, and then the next day everything works. Like everything falls into play. You get the right bus on time. You get this on time. Like everything sort of works out. And so that's my complaint for today.
Okay.
So I feel like last time, for those of you who were last time, I was asked, the Rebbitzin asked me to talk about kashrus, about kosher laws and stuff like that. And I felt like after the class, maybe I got too technical into it. So I just before.
So are we not talking about the kosher food today?
Okay. No, so we're going to talk about it, but I feel like I have to like back up a little bit, and because I think I should give a better introduction, so I think would make things a lot clearer. So we have, bless you, so we have many commandments. We have, do you know the number of how many commandments we have?
10.
360.
613.
613.
Oh,
How much?
wow.
613.
Okay. Now, how many?
I just swapped the leaders here.
Wait.
Okay. How many are positive and how many are negative?
Mitzvot,
Yeah. How many are the ones you should do and ones you shouldn't do?
248 positive,
Right.
and 365 negative.
Perfect. Okay. Why is there more negative? I'm not sure. There's a lot more not to do. Okay. Now the 613 mitzvahs are only general categories. There's a lot more. Those are just like, it sounds like a big number. Like people know about the 10 commandments and stuff. 613 sounds like a crazy number, but actually it's just a general category. Like you could only get into a mitzvah, you could only get into the list if it's a certain category, and then within that category there's a subcategory. So each law could have 100 sub-laws, and then that's divided into more laws and more laws. So it's not as simple as 613, but within the 613 there's different ways of making it easier to categorize things. So there's two categories. There's many different categories, but there's two categories that are very important to know about. One is the social laws, and then there are the God section.
Social and?
Social, laws that are between man and man, and then there's laws that are between man and God. Right. So it's bein adam lamakim, bein adam between a person. In Hebrew, it's called bein adam between a person and makim is God, and bein adam lechavera between person and person. So there's the legal law that has to do with like people law, and then there is godly law. Now, if you look at the Ten Commandments, the two tablets, it's an interesting study for itself to really go through, because if you look at the Chumash, it doesn't say like a list of 10 commandments. It's part of a verse. It's like a long, and the first 5 commandments are very long-winded. They're a lot of verses when it comes to the first set of commandments. The second set of commandments are a lot shorter. They're 1 or 2 verses. You have them all compacted in one. Now, the difference between the 2 sections of the 10 commandments, one section is primarily the first 5, besides Shabbos, but the first 5, or we'd say maybe like the first 4, are about between man and God, and the rest of them would be between man and man. So that's the basic division that we have in the Jewish experience. Now, after those 2 separations between the God's law and social law, you have also 3 categories within the laws itself. You have, I'll say it in Hebrew first. First is chukim. Chukim are the laws that don't make sense. Chok, like chukim. I don't know how to say it in English, but these are laws that are completely senseless. There's no reason or rhyme for the laws. It doesn't make sense. So a nonsensical law would be, let's say, all the kosher laws. There's no difference between, it doesn't really make sense, the kosher laws. There's really no difference between the cattle. We were talking last week about the way it's supposed to be slaughtered and the way it's supposed to be processed. There really is no difference. If you look at the piece of meat, there's no difference. When you look at the store, if it's a good piece of meat, if a good piece of chicken, it looks the same. There is no difference in the physical. It's a godly law. God decided that God wants this, He doesn't want that. Why does He want a certain bird? This bird's kosher and this is not kosher. This animal is, this is not. It doesn't make sense. It's not normal laws. Those are like the crazy laws. And then there is mishpatim. Mishpatim are the ones that are rational, normal laws, civil laws. And the third is testimonials. It's called eidos. Eidos means like a aid, like a witness.
Oh, eight.
How do you spell it?
In English, I don't know.
In Hebrew.
Aleph Dalet is aid, like a witness. Aleph Dalet and then Vav Suf would be eidos, like plural. Suf, like yeah, tough, like the last letter. Okay.
It's the pronunciations.
The pronunciation.
Okay, now that we've actually figured out how to spell it, what is it? What is it? 65?
Oh, okay. So the last one is a testimonials. It tells you about like holidays, like Shabbos. It's the testimony about, it reminds us of, all holidays fall under that category of, Passovers remind us of Egypt. Rosh Hashanah is about the new year. It's all ceremonial things that remind us of something. So those are more logical because it's based on something. So you could technically live your life if you don't want to be crazy, if you don't want to do the crazy stuff, you could say, okay, I want Judaism that only has like the normal stuff, like the civil laws, but I don't want any of the crazy, like sort of the super rational, crazy stuff. And I guess it's like, you could say it's like in a relationship. You want, say, okay, I'm only going to do something if it's normal. Like, if you want something that's irrational, that doesn't make sense, I'm not interested. It's like, and the Jew, I'm sure you know there are Jewish people that are more religious, that are more like, they do all the things, you know, what we call Orthodox, which I don't like the term. That's something that we grew up like, we don't, the general like category of like Orthodox, conservative, reform. You familiar with all those terms? What?
That's very Ashkenazi.
Yeah. So those are categories that don't really make sense, that are just like things that are just put on later in history. But the idea is that, you know, a lot of the people that are religious, they do stuff that don't make sense, but they do it because that's what God wants. And the more like the Jewish people that don't keep anything, that keep less, it's because they want to do stuff, laws that make sense, that are like normal, that are like, you know, even Sabbath, like, okay, we'll keep Sabbath, but not all of it, not the ones that are like, the ones that say you can't drive a car, you can't use an elevator. There are laws that are like so difficult to keep and so hard that like it's easier the ones that you like have a meal with your family and have with friends, and you have challah and you have kiddush and you have, you know, salads and stuff like that. Like that sort of makes sense because it's a community, and you turn off your cell phone, and it's like those are things that you're like you could live with. But the other laws like don't make sense, and they're not logical, and they're just like they're a burden, you know. If you grow up religious like I grew up, so it shouldn't feel like a burden, but a lot of times it does feel like it's not something you've chosen. So because it's not a choice and it's routine, it happens every day, like we pray 3 times a day, and it's not, praying should be about dancing and loving God, but a lot of times it's just about reading the words. And it's repetitive, so you say it every time. You've been saying it for 20 years. Eventually it gets boring, and it gets like, and that's the problem with organized religion. I'm not here to bash and say bad things about Judaism, but part of the problem with Judaism is that it's not always exciting. A lot of it is just routine and boring. Like, I shouldn't be saying this, giving a bad rep to Judaism. I shouldn't be saying bad, but it's, I'm just saying from my perspective.
Real challenges that are human challenges that we as humans struggle with. That
Right.
makes total sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not here to bash. I'm just saying, as someone that grew up with this thing, it's like, it's very difficult to maintain the excitement and retain like what a child is excited about the Torah and about going to school and about, because it becomes routine. And just like life, you know, when you have a job that's routine, it's boring. It's just boring because you have to do it again and again, and it's not fun. But sometimes it's a good thing because we need stability in our life, and sometimes the boring stuff is a good thing, and the exciting stuff, that are fun stuff, it's fun for the beginning, but then after a while you need stability. Yeah.
I found, now that you mentioned that specific point, I found a really cool app yesterday that gamifies praying, davening.
Okay.
It tells you when the shachrit time is, when mincha is, the time, and it lets you have points, and it adds like your text, and it shows you visually like when is the best time to pray, when it's like okay, when it's not. And I got it because of that, because I wanted the visual to help me understand. But it's fun, and I can share it with you. Okay,
so again, so there's 2 tablets. We think of it about like, you know, like we were talking about before, the 2 sets of tablets, and there's the rational mitzvos, the irrational mitzvahs, and if really we said before about one half is about God's commandments and one half is about the social laws, right? The social laws all make sense. You could put that in the category. The social laws are the laws that make sense. And then the God section, which is Shabbos, honoring God, not cursing God. All those, the first section of the first 5 commandments, those are between God and us, and those don't make as much sense. Okay, so basically, what I'm trying to say is that all of the kosher laws make no sense. There's no reason for it. There's no rhyme for it. We only do it because God said so. Now, there are many commentaries and because we're a thinking people throughout the history, scholars try to figure out, why do we do certain things? Like, okay, God said so, we have to do what God said, but what's really the reason? So there are people that spend their life, and scholars throughout history spent their life trying to figure out what we call the reasons for the mitzvah. Why is God interested in this? But when we think about like the reason, it's not really the real reason. It's more of like humans trying to justify they have to do something because they're stuck in this relationship with God. And so now let's try to figure out what does God get out of it? What do we get from it? So it's very hard to serve Hashem, and I'm talking about myself. It's very hard to serve God without a reason. Like if you grow up with this, okay, your parents tell you got to do this, but like in order for religion to become you have to buy into it. And everyone has their own buy-in system about, like, let's say exercise. Exercise is not a comfortable thing. It's like, it's not easy exercise. Exercise is inconvenient. It's work. Once you get into it and you get into an exercise routine, then it's a lot of fun. And the more you do it, you feel healthier, you feel more energized. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's self-generate. It's like, so just like negative things you do, the more you do it, it just gets you more into like negative, and then positive gets you more. So everyone sort of has to have some reason why they do things, why they do mitzvahs, sort of your own buy-in system. And I feel like kids that, like where I grew up, where like kids go off the way and they sort of want to experiment outside of Judaism, what they're really trying to do is like they're stuck, they grew up with this thing and they want to rebel, just like any teenager person. Like they even if they grew up in a Christian family or a Catholic family, whatever family they grow in, they want to rebel.
Why did the separation begin? Like I'm not familiar with the history of like the creation of movements like conservative or reform.
Right.
Why did that happen to do you know?
There's many answers. One answer, it started because there's a need to put what you do in a box, in a category. It's just the way the mind works. So in the olden days, you had Moses and you had the scholars and stuff like that. And then you had people that didn't want to follow it. They just did their own thing, But they didn't make a religion out of it. They didn't make their own, like, category. Like, they're like, okay, there's the people that observe and I don't. It was just like a sort of modern invention that people said, okay, I'm out of it. I'm out of the mainstream Orthodox. So instead of saying I'm out and I'm just going to join the church or join the outside world, I could stay within this Jewish world and I'm going to put myself in a different category. I'm going to say I'm Reform. I think Reform started first before conservative, because Reform is saying I still want to be part of this collective thing. I don't want to completely leave this religion because of their own guilt, of like Jewish guilt, or because the outside world is still telling them they're Jewish, just like in Germany, when even the Jews that are very secular, that became part of society. They were medical doctors, they were lawyers. They were still reminded that they were Jewish. So Hitler didn't have a problem, we're going off a separate topic, but Hitler didn't have a problem with the people only that practice Jewish law. He didn't say, okay, I have a problem with all the yeshiva guys, or I have a problem with anyone that's observant. He had a problem with anyone that was Jewish. And even if you weren't practicing, you even went to church, or even if you married someone who wasn't Jewish, or unless you changed your name and whatever, I'm not sure how you got away from Hitler, but he was concerned about he understood that Judaism is not about religion, it's not about practice, it's about your DNA, it's who you are. So even if technically and for like 3 generations you didn't practice it, so he still considered you Jewish and he still wanted to kill you. But Hitler is just like it's just the latest innovation, we've been hated all this time, from Pharaoh to the Russians, to everyone hated us at a certain point. It was like, if you want to be anybody, you have to hate the Jews. You can't, like, it's like,
Wow, that's a I'll write down.
like, I mean, if you want to, like, just like now, it's like, if you want to be cool, you have to be anti-Israel, you know? But throughout history, you want to be cool, you have to be against Jews, because the Jews were easy to pick on. They were easy to kick around. And they were just like a good target if you wanted to mess with somebody. And everybody wanted to have a scapegoat. And everybody seemed, like we say in our prayers, in every generation, they wanted to get rid of us. They wanted to kill us. Like, there is no generation, unless we're talking about the king. There's maybe one time in history when we had King Shlomo Melech, that we had peace, that nobody hated us. But I think that was a unique part of history. There was never a time that someone didn't hate us. You know, when we came originally to Israel, and we read about Joshua, when he came, he had to fight the war because they didn't want the Jews there. And throughout the time, there was these Plishtim, there were people that lived there that were not interested in the Jewish people. So throughout history, we've been always hated by somebody. I don't think there was any time, especially now, you know, we're in exile, wherever we are, we're hated. And it's sort of off the topic, but the whole idea of Israel, we're in Israel now. One of the founding ideas of Israel is like, hey, let's come to Israel so we won't be kicked around and we won't be hated and we'll be respected because we have our own nation, we have our own military, we have our own government. Like, we're going to be treated like all the other nations. And yes, there are segments, there are people in India that love us. There are people that in America, the evangelicals, they love Jewish people, they love Israel. But it didn't erase anti-Semitism. It didn't like, oh, once there's Israel, now they don't hate us anymore. Now they have respect for us, because it's only certain people, certain nations that say, hey, Israel's pretty cool. Like, you know, let's learn from them. Let's let them help us with the water, you know, water innovation, agriculture. Like the nations that are not so full of hate, you know, like, let's say the difference, you know, she was talking about India, like the difference in India and Pakistan. Pakistan doesn't have a relationship with Israel. India does have a relationship with Israel. I was flying once, and this is just a random thing. I was flying because I used to fly a lot. I was sitting next to a lady. She's from Pakistan, and she showed me her passport, and she showed me on the passport, on a Pakistani passport, it says, what? But it clearly says you cannot fly to Israel.
Oh.
You're prohibited. They are not. So it's not just like theoretically they don't like Israel. On every single passport, she showed me inside. You can look it up online. You see, what does it say about Israel? That's the only country it tells you cannot go there.
Oh.
Pakistan. Now you think about this. Pakistan.
That's good. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
Is Pakistan or Palestine?
I'm not sure what it was.
Yeah, what?
Then what?
Urkasdim, you know, when you say your morning prayers and when it says Urkasdim.
I don't know.
But economically, India is doing better than Pakistan. India is more integrated into economically. They're a superpower, and part of it is because, in my opinion, because they have a relationship with Israel. They have a good relationship with Israel. They trade with Israel. They have military connections. They have the president of India is close with Israel and stuff like that. There isn't they.
However, South Africa.
Yeah.
So I have a question about the mitzvot. Like
Yeah.
the 613 are the one that's written on the Tanakh.
Yes.
So there are a lot others that are Mechagim and from the
Right. It has to be right. It has to be the 613. It has to have a source in the Torah. You have to read it inside. It has to either be either clearly like do not rob, do not steal, or there's different ways of doing it, but and there's like the most famous one that broke it down is the Rambam, Maimonides, and he tells you every verse, every mitzvah where the verse
was
is.
a reference. Of
Yeah,
where
a
it
specific. It has to have a specific verse. It can't just be like general, like you have to love, love God or love. I mean, that's also a mitzvah, but it can't be so general that it's not. It has to be tied to a specific verse.
Can you explain like the levels of mitzvot, like from the Tanakh and there's from the Simchat Torah or something like Rabbi.
Well, yeah. So there's
And then there's Mechagim.
right. So there's three categories. There's Midreshet, which means biblical commandments. So there are the 613 are referred to the biblical commandments. Those are like the ones that are in the Torah. Then there's rabbinical commandments. That's called in Hebrew midrabanan. Those are rabbinical commandments. Those were added after. And then there's minhagim, which are what you're saying. Minhag means a custom. It's something that we have a custom to do. It's not written anywhere. It's just it became culturally, and with a minhag, that's where things go off in different, because different countries developed their Judaism a little bit different. So the basic law is the same. Midreshet is the same. The 7 rabbinical laws are the same. But then there's minhag got, Spain has their own minhag. This one, because there wasn't a lot of communication, people went off on their own way.
And
About how important each.
yeah, they were all binding.
Yeah.
Like the verse like you follow your rabbi, choose yourself a rabbi means that
Right.
even though it's a mechagim, you still
Minhag.
a
Right.
minhag, you are still bound to do it. Like for Ashkenaz, it's 6 hours, 3 hours between milk and meat.
Yeah. So
and
between milk and meat, it's
this is
after.
custom. Yeah, this
Right.
Is,
So there's different opinions and different strictness, depends how you want to do. If you read the Torah, it just says you cannot cook milk and meat together. So the biblical prohibition, every law, everything you see in Judaism, you could trace it back and say, okay, what does it say in the Bible? So the Bible says do not cook milk and meat together. So it's about cooking. So if you only took about from the biblical perspective, then if I have milk here and I have a piece of meat here, they're not cooked together. Okay, so like a cheeseburger would be a problem because you're cooking the cheese and the meat together. Okay, so that's cooking. But if I have milk here and I have cheese here, milk and I have a piece of meat here, according to biblical law, you could eat them. But the thing is, rabbinic law came and said,
this is the oral law?
Yeah.
The rabbinical
yeah,
oral
rabbinic,
law?
yeah. So that came along and said, well, yes, there is that, but there's a binding law. So there's a binding law, and I guess maybe I'm mixing the two because I'm not being clear. But basically, there's the written law, and as you're saying, there's the oral law. Okay, so the written law is like what it says inside here. And there are people that throughout history there was a certain period of time that people said, I'm only going to do what the Torah says. Like if it's not here, if you can't show me a source of it here, I'm not going to do it.
The Congress, like, is a Russian.
Tzaddukim. Yeah. So these people were like, they said, I'm only doing the law what it says inside. But the thing is, throughout the law, there was always a tradition. So Moses didn't write down everything. He just wrote down like the main stories and the main laws. But there's a lot of tradition that were passed down from one generation to another generation. For example, in the Torah it says you should, when it comes to punishment, it should be an eye for an eye. Okay, so if you read it literally, it's eye for an eye. And in cultures that believe in the Torah, but they only believe in the written Torah, they're saying it's an actual eye for an eye. But we always understood it that it's not an eye for an eye; it's payment. That you have to pay the worth of the eye. So, like Rashi says, it's not literally an eye. It means. So why does the Torah use, if it's not literal, why does the Torah use an eye? To tell you that really you've done something so bad, your eye should be knocked out. But God had compassion, or the way the system was worked that it's the financial, you have to pay the financial loss. So what would be the difference between what a person's worth, let's say in the marketplace, let's say if your eyes, it sounds crazy, like in the market, like not in the human market. What I mean is, like, let's say for example, if you didn't have good eyesight, just think about this, like if you didn't have good eyesight, so you have to, let's say, work in a grocery store, versus if you had good eyesight, you could have like a high-tech job, or you could be a pilot, so like a pilot gets paid more than the person that puts the gas in the tank of the airplane. So you don't have to have such good eyesight. So if you were a pilot and your eyes got knocked out, so you'd have to pay the difference of what a pilot makes or what a person that fills the gas tank makes. So there was always that tradition that went with the written law, and so it's part of it. So it's part of there's the written law, and then the tradition that came with it, and that was always part of our tradition. And
but the tradition is not the same as customs, right? Because
right.
Custom is even a
lower,
down.
so to speak. Yeah, right. But the way we experience Judaism is that there is no difference between the way I think about it, and it's not exactly correct, but the way I think about it is like the state has laws, okay, or like the federal in America, there's federal laws, and then there's local laws, like a city ordinance, okay. So if you break us, and I don't know how it works in Israel, but in American system you have the federal law and then you have state law, okay. So sometimes you get for certain charges you get federal charges and state charges, okay. There are times, let's say with drug trafficking, if you could get federal, because like if you cross state line, it's a federal crime. If you go from one state to another state, that's a federal crime. Or if you do the crime in one state, it's only a state crime. And federal has their own federal codes, like penal codes, and then the state has their own. But and then like the city will have their own city code and county code. But really, is there a difference if you're a citizen of the United States or if you're a citizen of Israel? Like Bad Ayin maybe has some rules. I don't know what the rules are, but is there really a difference in terms of if you live in this country? There's no difference in the big rule and the small rule if they're both punishable by whatever. So like the big rule, you could be death penalty, which they don't have here, but I'm saying like a federal crime is this amount of time, a state crime is less time, and stuff like that. But in terms of like, can I be Jewish and only keep, let's say, federal laws? That's like saying, can I live in America and say, well, I don't care what the local law says, I don't care what the state law says, I'm only going to keep what the federal law says. No, because they could throw you in jail, or even murder. They could kill you. The state could kill you for violating state law. So the way I think we look at it is that there is differences in laws, and when it comes to, let's say, leniencies, because sometimes rabbis need to find leniencies. That's part of the system, just like a computer is built, where sometimes there's ways around things, where they build like a trap door, like a back door. So the way the system of Torah is built is that rabbis are authorized to interpret, and not to change the law, but to understand it in context. So for example, Sabbath, you can't violate Sabbath. You can't light a fire, you can't do anything. But when it comes to pekuach nefesh, when it comes to saving a life and death, then you don't have to keep the Sabbath. You don't even have to ask a rabbi, because it's life and death. So the Torah tells you that, so that's not written in the Torah. It says you should watch your soul, so you learn it from it, but you need the oral tradition, you need the tradition to show you about like how to apply it. In what context does it mean? And a minhag is, so to speak, lower, but it doesn't mean less important. It doesn't mean like, oh, because it's only a custom, therefore it's not that important. It's if we the people decide that this is our custom, then it becomes important, and because it becomes important to us, it becomes important to God.
But maybe the difference is like if you're Sephardi and you fulfill say in a situation that you cannot fulfill the customs of Sephardi, but you can do it in an Ashkenazi custom, you still fulfill the Midreshet.
Right.
What's the difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardi?
Amazing.
What's the difference?
Yeah. Even the alphabet, also the aleph, bet, and all, also like it's different between Ashkenazi and Sephardi.
No, the shape is everything's like the basics are the same. It's just the food. The Sephardim have better food.
The pronunciation is different of some letters. So.
If
For Ashkenazi also different?
If you're talking about mitzvot, then the customs, they have very different customs. Also, Yemen, they have their own customs.
Right. The basics
so are
are.
we learning about
interpretation.
Ashkenazi or Sephardi?
So we're learning about.
It's very Ashkenazi.
Oh,
They
right.
do sometimes
But
clarify,
Ayin is mostly-
but Tan is mostly
Mostly
Ashkenazi,
Ashkenazi, right?
and that's like the default.
Like who are those? Who are
But for example,
Ashkenazi and who are
if
Sephardi?
you wanted to ask a perspective that's Sephardic, Rav Ben Aruch is Sephardic.
Ashkenazi are from mostly Eastern Europe, and Sephardi are from Spain or North Africa. Oh, Mizrahi and Sephardi.
Portugal.
I will be Ashkenazi or Sephardi.
Depends on.
You can be whatever you want,
Oh.
because you're creating a new
Even
custom.
the synagogue, the way they lead also, it's different, I guess.
Right. So they have different. It
Yeah.
it developed a little bit differently, but the basics are the same. Like Israel is the majority of people in Israel. There's more Sephardi. Even when the country started, it was okay. Depends when you want to start, when the country started, but the elites that came here from Europe, the Zionists, the elites that came here, they were European, but the people that came from most of Israel, at a certain point, all the other Arab countries kicked out their Jews. So Israel expanded. The more Jews that got kicked out of the Arab countries, the more Jews came here, and they basically, it was the majority were Sephardi Jews, even in the original days. Just the elites, or what they thought of themselves as elites, were the Ashkenazim Jews, the European Jews.
But most of them are secular, right?
Right.
Most of them are even anti-religion.
Right. The original Zionists were against. It wasn't a religious. The Jewish state wasn't a religious state. Even today, it's not a Jewish. Technically it's called a Jewish state, but it's not run. It's not. The government is a secular government. Like they have the civil laws. We're talking about God's laws and civil laws. When they say Judeo-Christian values, for example, Israel is not based, I mean, to a certain extent, it is based on the Old Testament, it is based on the Chumash, but it's not really based. It's based on secular law. It's based on like rational law, democratic values. It's more similar to England or America. You know, like there are some differences, like I mentioned last week that the separation between church and state doesn't exist in Israel. So that's a little bit of a conflict in Israel, where there's an inherent conflict between the religious Jews and the secular Jews, where basically the religious Jews own certain parts, like marriage and divorce is run by the Orthodox Jews. And in America, it's the regular government runs marriage and divorce. So like in America, when you get married, you have to get two separate licenses. You have to get a marriage license from the state or the city you live in, and then you have to get a license from the rabbi, like the one that officiates your wedding. In Israel, there isn't that separation. It's the document that gets you married here in Israel. It's a religious document and a secular. It's the same document. You know, even if you're the most secular person in Israel and you hate religion, and you have nothing to do with religion, and you don't want to have anything to do with anybody, your marriage license looks the exact same as the most religious, crazy fanatic. It's the same marriage license, just like in birth, right? And the birth certificates are the same in Israel. Your Tudat Zahut is the same. There isn't a religious one. So that's part of the issue with Israel. Not to complain about Israel, but there isn't that separation. And it's like, that's where some of the conflict could happen or is happening now. Okay, so getting back to what we're talking about. So just back again. So we're talking about God's laws and mitzvahs that make sense, okay? So we were talking last week about the why we eat certain foods. Okay, so there's a commentary that explains the reason why we don't eat wild animals. Animals like we mentioned last week, we only eat non-domesticated. We only eat animals that don't eat animals. Like we only eat animals that that eat grass. Okay, and are not violent. And are basically tame. Like we only like our animals that are tame and relaxed. And the reason is, there are some commentaries that explain, is because we are what we eat. And if we eat something that's wild, it's something that's aggressive and as a hunter, it could affect our nature. And we don't want to be hunters and be aggressive. We want to be calm, nice, normal people. So therefore, we don't want to eat. Now, it doesn't mean
That's really funny.
it doesn't mean that everyone has to eat kosher. It doesn't mean if you're not Jewish and you eat, a lion, tiger, bear, there's something wrong with you, or a pig. There's nothing. It's not like you're healthier if you eat kosher. It's not about health. So there are people that said, oh, there's a reason. Remember we were discussing about the time, and there's the reason for the mitzvahs. There are mitzvahs that make sense and mitzvahs that don't make sense. And even the commandments that make sense, there are tons of books, shelves and shelves of books of people trying to explain the reason for the mitzvah. What's the sort of logic behind the mitzvah? So one commentary, many commentaries say, well, we don't eat this meat because it's wild, and we don't want to be wild, and we don't eat milk. We don't mix milk and meat because milk represents life and meat represents death. So there's a lot of reasons, but ultimately it's not the real reason. It's a justification, so to speak. It's a reason why we do it. So either to motivate us,
to be able to relate to it.
right? So it could be more relatable or more meaningful or more something, but it's very important to understand that it's not about, it doesn't make sense, and therefore it's not for everybody. You know, you could serve God. If you're not Jewish, you could serve God by eating pig or eating bugs or eating stuff that we don't consider good for us. But just because it's not good for us doesn't mean it's not good for someone else. There's nothing inherently, if there was something wrong with mixing milk and meat, it was an unhealthy thing. Or like, let's say with pig, they're saying, oh, there's health problems with pigs. It has trichinosis or it has something, you know? So if there was a health problem with food, with this food, why would God say, okay, only Jews I'm giving you a healthy diet, like a secret healthy diet, and everyone else could just get fat and get unhealthy and, you know, get high cholesterol. That's not right, because God loves all his children. What God is saying is that I have a special religious diet that has nothing to do with health. It has nothing to do, so it's a misnomer. It's wrong for people to like, not wrong, but it's just not the real deal when you get into a whole reason why it makes sense, why it's healthier for you. Because even today, it's not, you have people that keep very strict kosher, but they're very unhealthy. And they're eating way too much white bread and too much white pasta and too much, you know, bad oil and too much, and they're very religious, but they're not, and it could be by eating all those unhealthy stuff, they're actually going against religion, because the Torah says you have to watch yourself, you have to watch your health. So by eating, you know, so much extra white challah.
Is it overeating counting?
Yeah, overeating is not good, unless Chaya, my daughter, makes challah, you know, or Leah, fine, that's okay. But, and if you're eating on Shabbos, that's different, because calories don't count, because you're eating, it's not, you're not just eating for your body, you're eating because it's a mitzvah, so it changes the dynamics of the physical food. Is it clear? Is it any questions?
Yeah, I want to know about like the difference between Jews and non-Jews.
What do you want to know?
I want to know the difference between like Jews and non-Jews.
That's a really big question that you're asking.
Jews are basically hated by everybody. That's one of the main features.
I have a question. Why?
Why are we hated?
There must be a good reason.
There must be a good reason.
Yeah.
It's okay if people hate us. If Hashem loves us, then it's enough.
Okay, so why does God? So there's a few reasons. There's really no good reason, but there's a few sort of reasons. So one reason is Atem. We're called Atem Edai. We are God's witness, and the reason why we're witness to God is because we show the world that God exists. Because we're a continuous nation. Everybody wanted to try to kill us, and nobody was able to successfully kill us. And we are basically the thorn in everyone's back, and saying like that God exists because we exist. So just like in a criminal case, if someone kills someone, you want to try to, you know, like if someone saw it, you want to get rid of the evidence. You want to get rid of the video cameras. You want to kill. So part of the obsession of getting rid of the Jews, of killing the Jews, is because if we get rid of the Jew, we get rid of the consciousness, we get rid of God consciousness.
So then do you think that is because the logic in twisted people that want to kill us all is, if I kill the Jews, I kill God, therefore I am God?
Yeah, but it may not be conscious with everybody.
Right.
And it may not be like your average anti-Semite. They hate Jews because like Jews run Hollywood, run the world and stuff like that. I don't know if they're always, maybe they're right that we run Hollywood and run the world, I'm not sure, but
Not yet.
not yet. But they're doing it as they're being hateful. Are they doing it because they hate God? I don't know if they're aware of being hate because they hate God, so they hate the Jew. But
Maybe they don't like the fact that Jews think they're better than us.
But even non-Jews
They are
have a God.
Christians. A
Right.
lot of them are Christian that do believe.
I think they feel
Right.
that Jews think
Yeah.
they're better than non-Jews.
right.
That's what I've heard.
Like if
I mean, yeah, there's every reason, like, you know, if Jews are rich, they're like, oh, the Jews are rich. If Jews are poor, like, throughout, we had such a long history that in every circumstance, they hated us. If we were communists, they're like, oh, Jews are communists. If we were, money making, they're like, oh, you guys are capitalists. Like, whatever system we were in, we were always hated. So it's not like, if you're communist, like in Russia, in Russian communists, even the Jews that are very into communism, they were still hated by the Russians. They were called Jews. Like I know people from Russia that on their passports, and it's still today, on the passports in Russia, it has the religion on the passports. So when they're in Russia, they were called Jews by other Russians. Even though, I know people, I personally know people, now the family lives in Bet Shemesh, but he grew up, and this is just one person of millions of Russians, Jewish people, or hundreds of thousands, whatever. They were secular as crazy. Like, they were very highly educated from Moscow. So we're not talking about like living in some crazy off village that never saw a Jew. We're talking about a normal city where there's universities and normal everything. This guy was educated in Moscow, everything, but he was called Jew. And he was made fun of, and he was discriminated against. And like this same person, when he comes to America, the Jewish people call him Russian. Like it was like a
That's so sad. That's
yeah, and it was like, here I spent all my life being called a Jew, like in a negative way, and now I'm being calling a Russian, which I was never, like the Russians didn't consider me Russian. Like I was never a real Russian, because even though I was communist, even though I went to university, even though I was an engineer, whatever I tried to do.
How converts feel.
I don't know.
Same. Sad.
But there really is no like logical reason why they hate us. It's just like, it just seems like anti-Semitism has to be like, it's even more predictable in taxes. Like taxes has to be. It just seems like just the human condition, just like we need to eat and we need to sleep and it just seems so natural and so normal. And the fact that certain nations or certain people don't hate us, to me, it's like a chiddush,
What about
like a novelty. Like, hey, you don't hate us. That's cool. Why don't you hate us?
the fact that we expect that they're gonna hate us is why they hate us?
No.
Because sometimes if you just don't tell someone you're Jewish, like at least for me, I could look not Jewish. Let's say I just say like someone at the hotel, whatever, I walked into the store and I'm like, he's like, are you Jewish? I'm like, no, just to see whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, and I was like, why do you greet me? Like I was thinking, why do you greet me like that
Differently.
if I'm not Jewish? So it could just be projection that we think they're gonna hate us.
Right.
But you did.
No, but it is
you're
true.
not
Like we're
Jewish.
manifesting it.
No, but it is true. Some of it is just made up. Like, if you get fired at work, it's not because they're an anti-Semite. It could be you're just bad at work. So not everything, you can't blame everything on race. You can't blame everything on your religion.
Right.
But there is a lot of, if you look around the world now, you see, the anti-Semitism in England and in France. Sometimes it was lowered down. But
Nowadays it's because of the Muslims, no?
right. But it used to be Christians, hated us. Now it's the
Why do
Muslims' turn
Christians like us now?
because someone else is hating us. So there seems to be some conspiracy that God made up that someone has to hate us at every single point. So like Parai, Egypt, they hated us for a long time. Then it was the Babylonians. Then it was the Romans, and there was this. So like now the Muslims hate us. So now the Christians are like, hey, someone else is hating them. Let's be cool with them, But there was a time in the Inquisition, and it tells us that the Christians were the worst for us. They were like very evil and very like the worst of the worst. But once the Muslims stop hating us, then I don't know. There's other people that.
Mashiach comes.
Yeah.
South Africa.
Yeah. There's always another nation that's willing to take up the cause, Okay, so if there's no other questions about this, I want to talk about a very particular law that I was learning today. So in Vayikra, it talks about, this is the law about social justice, not justice, but social law. And this is a pretty interesting law. It says that it's in Vayikra Yutes Lamed He, and it talks about measurements, that a Jew is not allowed to have, it talks about more details in the Rambam in the laws of stealing about, but it's based on this verse, that it says that a person is not allowed to have, let me read it inside. Like tasa'o b'mishpat, you should not do an injustice in mishpat. You can't do something wrong in mishpat. B'mida u'b'mishkol u'b'mishuda. So the verse is telling us that you can't do an injustice when it comes to your measurements. So if a person has measurements like selling stuff in the store, like spices or food, like even today, everything is done when you buy tomatoes in the store, right? It's based on, they're not charging you per tomato, it's pounds, right? They're charging you right per right? So the Torah is telling us that you have to have your scales, you have to have your measures, scales and liquid measures has to be correct. So these are the three things. So to me, I find, when I was reading this today, I found this very interesting. Why does Hashem care how much I steal from someone else? Now, when we're talking about scales, so I don't know in this country, but where I'm from, there's the Department of Weights and Scales, which basically what they do is they come to your business and they weigh to make sure that your scale is what, if it, they'll put a 5 pound thing on it, they'll weigh it to make sure. And then they put like a thing on it, like a certificate on the thing that says I came at this time, and it's measuring correct. So the Torah tells us that a Jewish person, and I think it's also, it definitely applies to non-Jews as well, that you're not allowed to have so the way they used to measure it, right? They used to have a scale that would have like the weight on one side and then the food on the other side. So you have to make sure that this if let's say this is a 5 pounds, this needs to actually be 5 pounds. And if it's not, God is very upset. And Hashem says, I need, in the next passage it says, Tzedek yeh lachem, it should be righteous. Ani Hashem Elokecha asher hotzeichi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim. I took you out of Mitzrayim, and therefore your measures should be correct. And it seems pretty dramatic for God to say, you better be careful about this because I took you out of Mitzrayim. The Jews were in slavery for a very long time. It was a very suffering time. Just to say, like every little thing that we do, you better not mess up because, I took you out of Mitzrayim. It seems pretty harsh for God to say, like, your measuring thing. I mean, you're trying to make a few extra dollars. And we're not talking about, like a Ponzi scheme. I can understand a Ponzi scheme is very bad because you're like taking a lot of money from somebody. But measuring seems very, I mean, to steal, to make your measuring to steal, you basically have to make, the weight, you have to mess with the weights, right? So you're giving someone, instead of giving them 5 pounds, you're giving them, 4.5, and you're charging them for 5, okay? Now, how much could you steal already? We're not talking about a lot.
If it's gold, then it can be.
Right, it's gold is a lot.
Then...
Right, so that's a lot. But I'm saying everyday things. The Torah is talking, obviously also talking about gold and silver, but in the culture of agriculture and the culture of buying stuff, and even today, where we're so cool and modern, we still do. The only store that doesn't do this place called Trader Joe's. You heard of Trader Joe's? Yeah. So Trader Joe's, all their produce, they don't weigh anything. Everything, let's say, like tomatoes, are sold in a like a container like this.
The bundle.
So like when it's just scanned. So like it comes in like tomatoes, like a bundle of tomatoes, like whatever, let's say 5-6 tomatoes, and then they scan it. When you buy an eggplant, it's per eggplant. When you buy even a watermelon, they don't weigh the watermelon to see, like every store, normal store, you weigh the watermelon, right? But Trader Joe's is one of those, you just, so that's like a modern store. But even, modern stores, every modern store has a weight. So why is God so concerned about a weight stealing just a little bit? It seems like, right. But I can understand not to kill, not to steal, but like why is God concerned about something like so small?
You're basically doing it to yourself.
Right. Right.
Like if you're doing it to your brother, then you're actually doing it to yourself.
Right. Is it because they could cheat you when you buy something for them?
No, because don't do things that you wouldn't want done to you.
Right.
I think it doesn't matter how small it is. If it's wrong, then it's wrong.
Right.
And Hashem or any judge wouldn't permit it.
Right. So everyone's right. It's even though it's small, but the thing is, if you say God is not concerned about the small stuff, then really God is not really concerned about the big stuff. So quickly, maybe a different time we get into this, but quickly, when we said before about there's laws that are about between man and between God. When it comes to God's laws, let's say Sabbath, if you don't keep Shabbos, for example, if you mess up, you could do tshuva, and then Yom Kippur, you could be forgiven for doing tshuva. What if you steal from somebody? That, if you do tshuva, if you repent to God, that doesn't help. It never helps. You have to give back the stolen object, and sometimes in Jewish law, you have to actually pay. You have to pay double what you stole.
Or interest.
What?
Or interest.
Interest, or you have whatever it is, and you always there. You always. It doesn't help. You can't repent if you hurt another person. So in a way, hurting another person is even more difficult than hurting God. Yeah.
How do some people get away with hurting other people so much, but then they're still alive? Like,
Because then,
how are they still living
that's a good question. Because
for decades?
we're not judged. So there's a difference between stealing a candy and killing a person, right? They're both wrong, right? And they're both in God's master plan. Whether you steal a tiny bit of flour from this person by not having, your scales good, or whether you kill a lot of people, they're both not equally, but they're both bad. So how does Hitler get along? How Hitler did something, the genocide and the hate that he created, it was against what God wanted, yet he didn't die.
God let it happen.
God let it happen. He didn't get killed before his plan. Like, in fact, he was saved. Like in the First World War, there's stories about how like he was almost killed, and if it wasn't for some, so to speak, miracle, like he was a soldier and he could have got killed and he got injured, and he didn't die. Like, how does God? It's insane how like God, how did God allow this to happen? And that's something that's like a big theoretical philosophy. How does God allow evil in this world? How does God, like you were saying, how does God allow someone to live when he's doing something so wrong, when he's hurting people? Because the short answer is that God gives us freedom of choice. But there's a problem, because basically there's freedom of choice, and then there's a master plan. And there's two things that have to happen at the same time. There's individual freedom of choice, because there is reward and punishment. So if there has to be reward and punishment, because the Torah says that there's reward and punishment. So if there's reward or punishment, then you can't be compelled to do it. You can't be punished, just like Parai can't be punished for enslaving the Jews if it wasn't his choice.
But you said there is free will.
So there's free will. That's where these two things in Judaism.
His choice.
So it was his choice, but it wasn't. Basically, everything in this world, this is very complicated. Basically, everything is two things that contradict each other, but we have to basically live a life of contradiction. Basically,
Yeah, that's why it does that a lot.
everyone has freedom of choice, but you cannot impose your freedom of choice on me. So there's a divine plan, what we call hashgacha pratis. Yeah.
Why do some people start off with what seems like such a harder load than other people?
Why are some people born, with a disability? Or why are some people, their IQ is a lot higher? Why are people, like a lot of stuff are disadvantages that we have no control over. Our parents, how we look, our weight, our height. Like if you want to be a basketball player, you have to be a certain height. And there's no, you could complain from today to tomorrow. If you don't have the height to be a basketball player, you can't be a basketball player. If you want to be a fighter pilot, you can't have glasses. Even if you have surgery, they won't allow it. It's like, it's not fair that these set of people were born with good eyesight. And
It's not fair.
it's not fair.
It's not fair.
Right, it's not fair.
It's not about being fair.
Right, it's not about fear, but I'm saying we are.
No, I thought you said fear.
No, it's not right. It's not fair that certain, even in one family, you have children that need glasses, and some children don't need glasses, or higher IQs and lower IQs, and it's going to affect their entire life for the rest of their life. What options they have based on their genetic makeup, even though they have the same parents. So why is it that if someone has an easier language skill, they're going to do better in college, and they could potentially make more money than other people? So it's never going to be fair. And basically, everyone is given freedom of choice, but there's also sort of like a master plan. The way we see it is that there's a master plan. So you cannot impose, if you choose to do something wrong, that's your freedom of choice. But if you break this thing, so I'm choosing to do something wrong, I'm breaking this thing, I'm getting punished for breaking for my choice, not for the effect. If I know it's like a crazy idea, but basically I cannot impose my free choice on your life. If your life was not supposed to be messed up, I could not, like some people like blame, okay, so this is like more sensitive topic, but let's say if someone's a victim of, everyone has something that someone did something wrong to them, like a car accident, or like it was negligent, or someone was mean to you, or someone hit you or something, right? So the person that hit you, they have to be punished for what they've done. But the effect that they had on you, in a way you had it coming, even though it sounds like it's not insensitive, but it happened to you because it was supposed to happen to you. This person, basically there's like there's this wall of like.
It's like 10 minutes after break. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Oh,
Basically,
thank you.
it's a very complicated thing.
It's very interesting.
We have freedom of choice, but you can't impose your freedom of choice on someone else's destiny. You basically can't mess up someone else's destiny. And if you mess up someone's destiny, it's part of their destiny. And you shouldn't be walking around and saying, this person did this to me. And it's a normal thing, because I personally have this where I'm blaming people, and I shouldn't be, but I'm blaming people. You did this to me, and because of that, now I'm delayed by 3 weeks. And now, this is just a normal, natural thing. But part of growing up and like being more conscious is saying, okay, this happened to me. This person made a bad choice. But the fact that this is now delaying my work, or I can't go to work for the next month, or whatever it is that this thing had an effect on me, I have to accept that God is saying, it was my choice. This person has to repent for what he did, but
Like a messenger.
he's the messenger, and you can either
It was
be
my choice to be born.
no.
So how is it like? I'm talking about like.
You have freedom of choice within like limited. You weren't.
But then the Torah also says that your soul like chose your.
Yeah, I guess so. That's a little more complicated. Basically, you weren't yeah, you don't have choice of any.
Being born.
No,
Yeah.
you could be you could choose to be cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, be well.
Very much.
Yeah, it's like you can't choose what happens to you, you can only choose what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very hard. I was taking off my socks on.
Let's go.